This year gave us a lot of horror films. Whether it was demonic possession, ghost possession, killer animatronics, AI killer dolls, torture devices, childhood icons, fear itself, or the devil trying to clone Jesus, there are a lot of ways films have tried to scare their audiences this year. And yet it turns out the scariest film of the year doesn't involve any of that, but rather focuses on a true and horrifying story of systematic ethnic cleansing. Get ready to lose your faith in humanity because this one's rough. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else.
I ought to kill these white men who killed my family.
I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
See what about them?
See who's doing it.
Killers of the Flower Moon is the newest Martin Scorsese film and is based on the true story of the Osage Indian murders that took place in Osage County, Oklahoma in the 1920s. The Osage Nation find oil on their land and suddenly become the wealthiest group of people per capita in the world. But with all that money came a price. A group of whites who believed the mineral rights should belong to them. Suddenly, Osage Indians start dying at an incredible rate. And as the bodies start piling up, the more it becomes obvious that they're being systematically wiped out, so that the money will flow to the whites. Director Martin Scorsese has always had fascination of stories about examining evil, so it's very easy to see why he was attracted to this story. In the past, some of his films have received pushback from people who claim his movies glamorize or even romanticize criminality, particularly Goodfellas and especially The Wolf of Wall Street, where evil just looks cool and fun. So in those films, it's fair to say that Scorsese was interested in what makes wrongdoing intriguing and seductive. But with Killers of the Flower Moon, there is not an ounce of glamorization to be found here. In a lot of his other films, Scorsese's murders would show scenes of graphic, bloody violence in lingering detail and would be rather artfully staged. In this film, Scorsese keeps the camera at a distance and, for the most part, with only one notable exception, keeps the violence restrained, settling for rather boring static shots, which actually helps emphasize the callousness and coldness of the murders, illustrating just how pedestrian murder became for these whites. Scorsese focuses on the suddenness of the acts, the callous disregard for human life, and the incompetence on display from the murderers. The incompetence is actually important to convey because it really does make you realize these killers were not intelligent. They were schemers, sure, but they left behind such a massive breadcrumb trail that it becomes impossible to ignore unless you're deliberately looking the other way. The longer the film goes on, the more you realize that the only reason they were able to go undetected for as long as they were was because despite, or maybe even because the Osage Indians' great wealth, there was no systems or structures in place to protect them, and as the film progresses, you realize just how massive this conspiracy was to systematically wipe out these people, and the massive scope of it will genuinely make you lose sleep. Fairfax, Oklahoma became a playground for murder, with chess pieces set up and sacrificed with as much regard for their lives as one would swat at a gnat. And the film goes to great lengths to show these are not just white people just killing random Osages that they didn't know. These were people that they broke bread with, drank with, celebrated life with, mourned with, putting on a facade of a loving neighbor or even a loving family, only to be scheming about their impending demise just out of earshot. The scene that best exemplifies that is a scene of two guys, a white guy and an Indian, enjoying and sharing a bottle of whiskey together, only for the white guy to shoot him in the back of the head once he's not looking. This is why I would argue the film's really long runtime of 3.5 hours is absolutely warranted and vital, because the film wants to set up and establish all these relationships between the whites and the Indians in order to make the betrayal hurt as badly as it does. And all for money that gets squandered away in an instant. Scorsese, to his credit, doesn't whitewash this story or try to solder its rougher edges. He presents the racial tension between the whites and the Osage as it was, without going into caricature, which is a difficult balance, but he nails it. The result is a film that's equal parts horrifying, depressing, and rage-inducing. And technically speaking, this film is just immaculate. The production design of emulating 1920s Oklahoma is incredible, helped by the fact that the entirety of this film was shot on location in Oklahoma. The cinematography is stellar, the soundtrack from the late Robbie Robertson is great, and there are several visually striking scenes. And that's not even getting into the acting. This might actually be the best acted film of the entire year, with everyone on their A game to bring these characters to life. If there is a standout performance in this ensemble, it would be Leonardo DiCaprio's outstanding work as Ernest Burkhart. This is not an easy role for any actor, because this is a character who throughout most of the movie, you can't tell exactly what he's thinking. Does he genuinely love his wife? Was he as dumb as he looks and allowed himself to be manipulated? Just how guilty does he actually feel over what he did? All of this ambiguity with the character and his actions or inactions are all done perfectly and make the character fascinating to watch. This doesn't feel like a typical Leonardo DiCaprio performance. He does actually embody this character. But coming in just behind DiCaprio is Lily Gladstone's magnetic performance as Molly Burkhart. She has a really thankless role of portraying a character who, for most of the film, is either deathly ill or constantly grieving, but she brings so much weight and gravitas to her character, providing what's more or less the soul of the movie, and painful moments of quiet but seething righteous anger. Robert De Niro is also fantastic as Hale. He portrays the man as someone who is so overconfident in his ability to manipulate events to his benefit, and able to just barely hide the contempt he has for the Osage community while simultaneously orchestrating their deaths. Hale might actually be the single most evil character in all of Scorsese's filmography, which, if you know Scorsese's filmography, is saying quite a lot. These three lead performances are some of the very best performances of the entire year, but every actor gets a chance to shine and perform their roles very well. Jesse Plemons, Tantoo Cardinal, Cara Jade Myers, John Lithgow, Brendan Fraser, and many others are all excellent. And the way the film communicates what became of the cast of characters after the events of the film was incredibly unique, and also helps really drive home the point of how these murders really became nothing more than a spectacle in the eyes of the American public. It's one of the most powerful endings to any film I've seen this year, with the final line delivered by Scorsese himself having the ability to send chills down your spine. Any complaints I have are the tiniest of nitpicks. Like, there are a couple of times where, given the sheer scope of the cast of characters, it does take you a second to kind of figure out who exactly the characters are talking about, or get certain characters mixed up, but thankfully those moments are few and far between. For the most part, the film does a magnificent job of keeping everything balanced and making it easy to follow despite all the moving pieces, which is no small feat for a film this sprawling, and really showcases Scorsese is in complete command of his vision. Killers of the Flower Moon is an exemplar film, an American masterpiece from one of the all-time great filmmakers. All the performances are top-notch, the film is beautifully photographed, the set design is impeccable, and the pacing is absolutely flawless despite its behemoth runtime. And it's a film that will stay with you long after the credits roll. I know that choosing to go see a 3.5-hour film that will ultimately leave you feeling bewildered or depressed or infuriated is a tough sell for an average moviegoer. But if this is a film you're even slightly interested in, I would highly recommend you experience it at least once, in theaters if you're able. But this is a story that not only deserves to be told, it deserves to be seen and heard. Killers of the Flower Moon gets an easy full shot. In a year where so many of the so-called best films of the year left me walking away feeling disappointed, this one's the real deal. An incredible, towering achievement in filmmaking, and easily one of the best films of the year. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.